The UK government has denied giving financial compensation to Nissan following its decision to build two new car models at its Sunderland plant. Nissan had previously said it might pull out of the UK because of concerns over Brexit, but it said it had been given support and assurances by the government that persuaded it to forge ahead with production. Well, to discuss this now, we're joined by Gordon MacIntyre-Kemp, who heads up Business for Scotland, and by David Watt, who's Executive Director for the Institute of Directors in Scotland. Morning to both of you.
Morning.
Good morning.
David Watt, what do you make of what assurances might have been given? What do you think the government could have said to Nissan?
Well, I think the government should be speaking to all businesses, to be honest with you, to try and consider what their position is now in light of the Brexit vote. So I think businesses, large and small, need to be in discussion with the government. So in principle, I would welcome that. To be honest, there's obviously no clear detail of what might have been discussed on this occasion, but I think the principle of it is speaking to business and not just acting, if you like, solely, if you like, politically, is really important.
And Gordon MacIntyre-Kemp, do you think it's right that these assurances are given to businesses? I mean, obviously it's in the UK's economic interest that companies continue to produce here.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a deal been done. The question is, what does that actually entail? There very probably will be offers of more support, promises of no tariffs, potentially promises of special deals. For the car industry, that's been touted by Westminster insiders for a while now. But I think you can't really just have special deals for one sector and not another, for one part of the country and not another. And I think that in the next few days, we might actually see the EU start to announce that there actually isn't going to be any special deals, that it's one deal for everybody. So I think they're making promises they can't keep. And I think what they need to do is to make a clear line for all businesses and actually say to everyone, not to one sector or favourite one sector or be, over another. We can't have inequality. We've got to have everyone have the same deal. But there's no need for it to be such a hard Brexit. There's no mandate from that from the referendum we had anyway.
Well, I suppose we don't know the details of these discussions, but a single market, for example, has always been very important to the car industry, and that's not something, given the the concessions that go along with that Theresa May seems to be pursuing. So, in your mind, then, what is the next best thing that, in terms of assurances that may have been offered?
Well, I think that very likely a customs union, maintaining the customs union, will have been offered, and that's very important for big exporters like Nissan. Turkey's not a member of the single market, it's not a member of the EU, but it has a customs union, and that means that paperwork, which is actually a far bigger barrier than tariffs, is recognised throughout the customs union. Now, I think probably promises on that will have been made that will come out in the next few weeks. But also one of the drivers of this is that the pound has got dropped about 20% against the euro. So Nissan's cars exporting to Europe have actually got 20% cheaper. That's compensation in itself. So Nissan will have been asking what's going to happen to the pound. And I'd be very surprised if Theresa May was able to say, actually, no, it'll go back up again. And that probably means problems for the finance industry. So, if one sector gets a special deal, another sector is going to suffer.
David Watt, in terms of what we're talking about there with Gordon MacIntyre-Kemp, in terms of tariffs, or at least in terms of that not having to pay tariffs, having a deal which Turkey has. The other side of that, I suppose, is that having to adopt the EU's policies and tariffs from anywhere else in the world, really. So, I mean, what would businesses be happier with? Is that a deal that many industries, remember, if your members, would like to see?
Yeah, I think we've got to face up to the fact that Europe provides 42% of our export market in Scotland, so it's vitally important we try and retain that. I think Gordon's point is, as best we possibly can, retain that relationship. And Gordon's point about administration is absolutely valid. We do not want to go into lengthy trade negotiations, or indeed then individual companies having to fill in tons of forms in order to export things, which slows down the work and the business deals being done. So there's a real challenge to do that. And absolutely, we are very keen that we retain some membership of the European network in terms of free trade. It's really, really important as far as we're concerned. And it would be seriously damaging, I think, to Scotland if we can't do something in that space.
Looking at just Nissan's decision, though, David Watt, what does this say to the UK? Does it give some confidence, do you think, in terms of the economy and to other companies?
Well, absolutely. I think it's important we don't lose big companies bluntly. We need not just them, but we need to bear fair in mind that they have a massive supply chain, which will affect just not north or east of England, but parts of Scotland and the rest of the UK as well. So these big businesses are vitally important. As Gordon said, not just in the car industry, either in other industries as well. So we need to be making signs like this that we are speaking to business, we are listening to their concerns, we're doing what we can to negotiate our way through Brexit in a positive way for business as best we possibly can, and absolutely the Nissan decision is to be very welcome.
Gordon MacIntyre-Kemp?
I don't think that long term it really gives us much certainty. I think the only thing we could be certain of now is uncertainty. And I think that for Nissan to say we're going to build these next two cars there is one thing. We're not actually going to leave the EU for 2 years or 2.5 years probably. So I think that the actual economic impact of Brexit hasn't happened yet. It's a long way off.
But they will be. I mean, they take these decisions a few years before production begins on a new model. So they are looking to the medium term.
And they will be looking at the price of the pound versus the euro as well and thinking that either way there's an element of safety there. The question is whether or not they'll decide to build the next 3 or 4 models here or whether or not they'll be building those in the European plants. And I think that all depends on the type of deal that's done. And listening to David Mundell giving evidence to the Scottish Parliament yesterday saying that there will be a hard Brexit and there'll be no special deals for Scotland, I think that not just for that particular sector, but I think everyone now has to worry about the economic damage that's coming down the line in a couple of years' time, and that's when we'll know. And probably after the Article 50 is enacted, 3 or 4 months into the negotiations, we'll get some sort of feel as to how they're going. I think they'll go badly. I think they'll go very badly. And we'll also then get a hint of what the trade deals can be done afterwards. And that's when markets will react and when the pound will react even more.
So you don't take any succour then from an announcement like this from Nissan or indeed from the economic growth rate of the last 3 months, which confounded expectations by being better than expected?
Better than expected, but people are, I think 2% growth, if you annualise that growth rate, isn't anything to write home about, especially when inflation's at 1%. We're going to see inflation rise significantly because we import too much, we don't sell enough to the rest of the world, and therefore that's going to hit people's pockets. And rising prices will just increase growth, but it's not real growth, it's not money in people's pockets.
David, what are your members still concerned for the sort of medium to longer term here? You know, perhaps even once negotiations have been concluded and we know what we're facing?
Yeah, of course that they're concerned and they must plan for it. But while I understand what Gordon's saying and I don't deny it, but I think we need to be very careful about not being too pessimistic. Businesses have to face the facts as they know them just now, work to the timescales that seem to be developing and actually build their plans for the future to try and grow as best they can. So while absolutely there's massive challenges and probably most business people didn't want Brexit, we've got it. And we have to plan accordingly and be very positive about what we can do and the other opportunities that arise and look to new markets and do all these things as well as talk to government and ask them to be sensible and reasonable in the negotiations to negotiate sensible trade arrangements which are massively beneficial to this country.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed for speaking to us this morning.
Pleasure.
David Watt, their Executive Director of the Institute of Directors in Scotland, and Gordon MacIntyre-Kemp, who heads Business for Scotland.